Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to the Committee on Judiciary. It is Thursday, April 8th, our second meeting of the day, and I would like to call this meeting to order. Will the clerk please take a roll call attendance?
Madam Chair,
Here.
Senator Archambault, Senator Raptakis,
Here.
Senator Burke,
Here.
Senator Oyer,
Here.
Senator Lombardi,
Here.
Senator Quesada,
Here.
Senator Rogers.
Here.
There are 7 members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We have a number of things to take care of this afternoon. We have a very long agenda. First of all, I'd like to take care of, for consideration only, we have House Bill number 5257 as amended by Representative Williams on today's agenda for consideration. This is the matching bill to Senator Coleman's bill that we passed on the floor last week, an act relating to property, Rhode Island Fair Housing Practices Act. If there are no questions from committee members, may I have a motion to pass House Bill 5257 as
Senator
amended?
Oyer moves.
Thank you, Senator Oyer. She moves that motion, seconded by Senator Rogers. Mr. Clerk, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Senator Raptakis,
Yes.
Senator Burke,
Yes.
Senator Oyer,
Yes.
Senator Lombardi,
Yes.
Senator Quesada,
Yes.
Senator Rogers.
Yes.
There are 7 in the affirmative and none in the negative.
Thank you, and it's unanimous. It'll move to the floor. Next, we have 10 solemnization of marriages bills from the House up for hearing or consideration. I would like to bundle these bills for consideration, and they are House Bill number 5253 by Rep. Carson, House Bill number 5413 by Representative Casimiro, House Bill number 5414 by Representative Kislak, House Bill number 5481 by Representative Kazarian, House Bill 5482 by Speaker Shekarchi, House Bill 5483 by Speaker Shekarchi, as well as House Bill 5952, House Bill 6109 by Representative Tanzi, House Bill 6120 by Representative Casey, and House Bill 6130 by Representative Lombardi. If there are no questions from committee members, do I have a motion to pass all 10 of these solemnization of marriages bills?
Motion to pass all 10.
Thank you. Senator Rogers moves that motion, seconded by Senator Quesada. Mr. Clerk, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Senator Raptakis,
Yes.
Senator Burke,
Yes.
Senator Oyer,
Yes.
Senator Lombardi,
Yes.
Senator Quesada,
Yes.
Senator Rogers.
Yes.
There are 7 in the affirmative and none in the negative.
Thank you very much. The vote is unanimous. All 10 bills have passed this committee and will move to the floor. Again, our committee has another full agenda. Today, we will be hearing 20 bills in keeping with existing virtual protocol for this committee. I would ask for a motion to hold all 20 of these bills before us for further study.
Motion to hold bills in front
Thank-
of us for
Second.
further study.
Thank you. Senator Rogers moves that motion, seconded by Senator Quesada. Mr. Clerk, please take a roll call vote.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Senator Raptakis,
Yes.
Senator Burke,
Yes.
Senator Oyer,
Yes.
Senator Lombardi,
Yes.
Senator Quesada,
Yes.
Senator Rogers.
Yes.
There are 7 in the affirmative and none in the negative.
Thank you very
Madam Chair,
much.
if I could be counted as second in that and in the affirmative and present, thank you. We had a problem with my video, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Archambault. His vote does not affect the outcome of the vote taken this afternoon. Thank you. Next, in an effort to utilize both the sponsors and the public's time more efficiently while conducting these hearings virtually, I will ask each of the sponsors, if present, to introduce and explain their bill. And upon conclusion of the sponsor's introduction and explanation, we will then take public testimony on each of the bill. This way, if the member of the public has signed up to testify on more than one bill, they may do so at this time. So I believe the first on tonight's agenda is Senate Bill number 58 by Senator Seveny. Is he on?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay, you may proceed with your introduction and explanation of the bill, Senate number 50, Bill 58.
Well, thanks, Madam Chair. Members of the Judiciary Committee, thanks for having me tonight. Well, this bill has been around for a little while. What it does is add a $250 fee to the schedule of fees and fines that exists for conviction of driving under the influence. The reason for the bill is to try to establish some persisting, consistent revenue for the prevention resources that exist in our state. And prevention, there are several dimensions to that, but the ones that we're primarily interested in funding are the regional preventional coalitions around the state. There are 8 of them, and the other organization is the Student Assistance Counselor Program that puts counselors in the schools specifically there just to help the kids. And this is middle school and high school. Believe it or not, much of the substance abuse problem in our kids today is very prevalent in middle school as well as high school. As it stands right now, there is almost no state revenue that gets allocated budgetarily to support substance abuse prevention. Almost none. What BHDDH does is allocate the SAMHSA grants to the various sources, and that those grants go to support treatment and recovery programs as well as prevention. And what happens is because there's such a demand and such a drain on resources for people who already have a problem, there's very little left over for the prevention programs. And what that means is it's very difficult. By and large, these are relatively large groups of volunteers led by professionals. And, paying for these professionals and paying for the programs that the prevention coalitions are trying to run in our schools, it's expensive and it's very difficult within the short budget that BHDD allocates. These are all contracted activities, by the way. All the prevention coalitions are under contract with BHDH, as is the substance abuse, the Student Assistance Counseling Program. You'll hear more from them later, I think, in testimony. So, the problem we have that we're trying to fix is how do you keep good people on the ground dealing with the students to send that message, sell the message that substance abuse is a bad path, and the best way for us to deal with this problem in general is to get to the kids and help them understand not to travel down that path. That's what they're out there trying to do, and we need to support them better. That's what this bill attempts to do. The revenue stream would probably be anywhere between $250K to $500K per year, depending upon the DUI convictions each year. Oh, by the way, those convictions, they haven't really diminished in the last 4 or 5 years. There are north of 2,600 DUI arrests every single year in the state of Rhode Island. And as we all know, some of those end up as real tragedies. You're going to hear from, there's some opposition suggesting that adding additional cost to a perpetrator, someone who is convicted, is too hard. It gets increasingly difficult for these folks to find a way to pay the fines, and that may or may not be true. I'm not sure, but I will tell you this: the real cost is to the folks who end up being on the receiving end of a DUI accident. That's the real cost, and that's what we want to eliminate. So with that said, I'll take any questions. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's a very balanced bill because it's attempting to get the perpetrators to be participants in the solution, in the prevention programs, to try and make it a closed loop solution, if you will, where the people who are causing some of these problems are also contributing to a prevention program to try to keep this from happening in the future. So with that said, I'm happy to take any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for Senator Seveny from the committee members? I don't see any questions at this time, Senator. Thank you for your testimony.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Next up, we have Senate Bill number 314 by Senator Archambault. And this one is an act relating to motor and other vehicles, motor vehicle offenses. If you'd like to proceed and explain your bill.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Some years back, we had passed a bill to create a hardship provision in the law. And that was my bill, and it took a lot of work. I may have worked on that bill harder than any bill I've ever been involved with. And we had stakeholders on all sides. We had prosecution, defense attorneys, and ultimately Mothers Against Drunk Driving nationally got involved. And they were excited about having interlocks in cars. And the bill passed. And it made sweeping changes to the DUI statute 3127-2, and then the refusal statute that accompanies it, 3127-2.1. And of course, just like anything, over time, you see that there are tweaks that need to be done to these statutes, just like we deal with in a host of areas. And so, as suggestions for some edits and changes came forth, I brought stakeholders back together again a few years ago, actually. And this bill is what came out of that. So there are some cleanup provisions in it, but there's also a new provision, and this would actually dovetail into the laws that are about to change with respect to marijuana in the state of Rhode Island. And what it does is it creates a hardship provision for drug use where you are monitored by urine tests, and it's voluntary. You have to be monitored. It's pretty strict. If you come back negative on the test, you would automatically lose acquired. And this has been vetted by the Judiciary, by high levels of prosecution, by the Public Defender's Office at the highest level. This bill has passed our Senate 3 years in a row without any opposition. Problem is we had COVID last year, and so we weren't able to get into session. And this year, Representative Knight has sponsored a companion bill on the other side. It may have actually already come out of committee there. I think it did, and it's going to go to the floor. So there's been a lot of work put into this bill. Just one of the small cleanup provisions is mentioned in the squib at the end of it, and it talks about the notice of implied consent, and that will be hand-delivered at the location of the test. There are many, but I'll just touch on this one. Whenever you have a DUI test and you've been arrested, you come back, you've taken the test, you have to be given copies of the breath test that were put out of the Intoxilizer 9000. This has a cleanup provision in it that can actually be physically handed to the individual rather than mailed within the 72 hours that's required. That's just a simple housekeeping measure that is part of the cleanup. Also, we have something that the attorneys who deal with this in court would know all too well, and that is the 30-day rule. You have a right to a speedy trial within 30 days, and it's waived by course. You can't practically handle a DUI frankly, a prosecutor wouldn't ever be able to wrap something up immediately without having read the police report and vetted all the facts. So all sides can't really get the case in a posture to be resolved one way or the other within 30 days. So you will see defense attorneys always in court. The judge will say, do you waive the 30-day rule? They say, yes, I waive the 30-day rule, or the case doesn't proceed. So this removes that, which makes the judiciary say, thank you. So it's just little cleanup things. And anyways, we passed it 3 years in a row, and my understanding is it's been received favorably on the House side. So I'd ask that you, if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them, and that you look favorably upon it again, and we get it out and clean up some of the provisions that need to be cleaned up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Archambault. Any questions? Seeing none at this time, thank you for your testimony. I'm just going to take a couple of bills by Chair Sosnowski now out of order. She is in the building this evening because she's chairing a committee which starts very soon. So if the committee will now turn, I believe she has 3 bills on. First of all, welcome to the committee, Chair Sosnowski. We appreciate you coming before us this evening. So I'd like to begin with Senate Bill number 685. This is an act relating to the motor and other vehicles, motor vehicle vehicle offenses, and this would extend the look-back period. You may proceed with that one first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate you taking these bills up so I can get back to committee. And as you said, this act would extend the look-back period for a third and subsequent driving under the influence and a refusal to submit to a chemical test to 10 years from the current 5 years. And this bill I introduced, this is the Attorney General's bill. It is a bill that I have introduced for several years, and I'm sure you'll have more extensive testimony from the Attorney General's office on this, but basically that's what this bill does. It would really, really be a strong defense to make our roads much safer in Rhode Island, and I hope the committee will look favorably upon the legislation.
Do any committee members have any questions of the chair on this bill before we move to the next one? Seeing none, your next bill is Senate Bill 682, also relating to motor vehicles. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, very simply, this bill, the act would provide that the permissive use of a wireless communication device for the purpose of navigation of a motor vehicle shall only be applicable in cases where the device is mounted or otherwise affixed to the vehicle and not held in the motorist's hands. And this bill is, I introduced it at the request of the Judiciary. It would clarify the statute. I understand that that's needed in this situation. It just adds again to clarify the statute on hands-free use of wireless handsets while operating a motor vehicle.
Thank you. Any questions of Chair Sosnowski on this bill? Okay, no questions at this time. And I believe your last bill is Senate Bill 683, also related to motor vehicles. You may proceed.
Yes, and this basically is removing the sunset. Would sunset the provision which allows first-time violators to avoid the fine by presenting proof of acquisition of a hands-free device prior to the imposition of the fine, effective September 1st, 2021. And again, this is introduced this. Further refine the statute at the request of the Judiciary.
Thank you.
And
Any questions of Chair Sosnowski? Seeing no questions at this time, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's a joy to be back in the building.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will return now to the beginning of the agenda. I believe next is Senate Bill number 403 by Senator Reptakis, also related to motor vehicles. You may proceed, Senator Reptakis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This again is a bill identical to what I've been putting in many years. It's the look-back bill. And what I want to add to Chairwoman Sosnowski's bill, because we co-sponsored each other's bills, is Rhode Island has one of the weakest statutes when it comes to look-back. Massachusetts has a lifetime look-back, and this is for the hardcore repeat alcoholic impaired drivers. Connecticut is 10 years, New Hampshire 10 years, Maine 10 years, New York 15 years, New Jersey 10 years. So we are probably the weakest state when it comes back to look back. So that's why this piece of legislation is very, very important that the Attorney General and the Chairwoman have sponsored. I think it's an important bill, and I think it's time that this year, this Senate and this General Assembly passes it, taking us out of as one of the weakest states when we look back at records for especially repeat drunk drivers to make our roads safer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for Senator Reptakis? Okay, seeing none at this time. Next is Senate Bill number 410 by Senator Morgan. I don't see her on the screen. I'll read it into the record. This is an act relating to motor and other vehicles, motor vehicle violations, fines collected. This act would prohibit the state, municipalities, or courts from attempting to collect any motor vehicle violation fines or costs after more than 7 years of the fine becoming final. Okay, from there we go to Senate Bill number 596, also by Senator Reptakis, related to motor vehicles. You may proceed, Senator Reptakis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill, again, we're doing 596, is making penalties for drinking and driving more extensive. Again, Rhode Island has a weak record when it comes to drunk driving as far as adjudicating, convicting, and keeping a lot of these drunk drivers off the streets, especially when we have countless Rhode Islanders dying on our state highways and our streets, severely injured, but yet the penalties are not up to standard. Again, we have some of the weakest alcohol drinking and driving laws in statute. So what this bill does, it increases a lot of the penalties and sends a strong message that if you want to drink, you don't drive. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions of the Senator? Seeing none at this time, we will now move to Senate Bill number 318 by Senator Archambault, also related to motor vehicles. Senator Archambault.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Did you mean, instead of 318, did you mean, let me see where I am. I want to get my bearing here. Oh, yes,
Passing, use of lanes, and rules of the road.
I apologize. I have my bearing here now. It's more, did I mean that I was picking up on the right bill? This bill we put in for the vulnerable road users. Those are people that are either walking on the highway or bicyclists. And I had met with this coalition, this group of activists several times in past years. And the bill was put together, then tweaked a little bit, and we passed it in the past. And it didn't pass the House side for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. That's my recollection of it. But it's a good bill, and it adds protections that I think should be there. A little stiffer penalties for people who don't respect vulnerable road users. People who are on the same roadways who aren't in cars. And the sentiment of maximum Lou Raptakis, this bill will exact a pound of flesh to those who should have that pound of flesh exacted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Archambault. And I believe you have the next one also, 401, an act relating to motor and other vehicles, safety, responsibility, administration, security.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This bill redacts major sections of the law by repealing basically the requirement that you have to file a bond with the DMV following a motor vehicle accident in which the operator of the vehicle doesn't have insurance. This is a top priority for the Department of Motor Vehicles. They put a lot of work into this bill, cleanup provision, but this bill is very important to the DMV. It's going to make the system and the way they deal with the filing of bonds a cleaner, smoother process. In a minute, we'll hear from Mr. Booth, Brad Booth, who's the attorney for the DMV, and he'll be more articulate on the issue than I'm being. But it's a very important bill to the DMV, and it's a cleanup provision. Kind of like some years back when we got rid of the SR-22, which was a requirement that you post proof of your insurance, and that was a redundancy. It was just an unnecessary level of expense. So the DMV helped to promulgate that bill, and that was a nice cleanup provision that we passed. This is the same type of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions of committee members? Yes, Senator Reptakis.
Madam Chair, not a question, but in abundance of caution, I think we skipped over one of the bills, one of my bills, 409. I know we've gone down the list. We skipped over from Chairwoman Sosnowski's bills. I think we went to 596, but there was one bill way back, I think it was 409 that we missed.
Thank you very much, Senator Reptakis. We'll circle back after Senator Archambault's bill. Thank you. Any questions of the committee on Senator Archambault's bill 401? Seeing none at this time, Senator Reptakis, you may proceed on 409, which is also related to motor vehicles.
Chair, I'm sorry. This is, again, another bill that I've been putting in for many, many years. This bill is identical to a bill that was passed into law in New York State. What it does, if anyone is drinking and driving, gets arrested, gets convicted, now that's hard to do, and then under the suspension period where he has no driver's license to drive, not supposed to be getting behind the wheel, gets behind the wheel, and he's caught a second time. So what this bill does, it removes the plates from the vehicle, making that vehicle inoperative. We have to send a strong message. I know there's going to be opposition to this bill, but enough's enough. You're talking about a repeated offender that has been convicted, and he's driving under the suspended period where he does not have a driver's license. We're not saying after his probation is done with, he can drive again. But this is a strong message from the courts telling you once you've been arrested, convicted, and you don't have no driving privilege in the state, why do you get behind the wheel again? So this is sending a strong message that if you do, guess what? That vehicle is going to be gone. You're not going to be able to use that vehicle again. So thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you, Senator Reptakis, and my apologies for skipping over that by mistake. I may be moving a little too fast. Any questions of committee members? Seeing none at this time, I believe the next one is mine, Senate Bill 675, an act relating to motor and other vehicles. This act would provide that financial security is required for any motor vehicle registered, and it adds or required to be registered in the state of Rhode Island. And this bill was introduced at the request of the courts on behalf of the Traffic Tribunal. The bill does seek to close a loophole in the current law by providing that financial security is required for any motor vehicle registered or required to be registered in the state of Rhode Island. Any questions from committee members? Seeing none at this time, we will move to Senate Bill 676 by Senator Oyer, also relating to motor vehicles, responsibility of owners of rental vehicles. Senator Oyer.
Thank you, Chairwoman Coyne. This bill has also been submitted on behalf of the Judiciary, and it really is some also cleanup bill that's providing violations that of Chapter 34 of Title 31 pertaining to rental vehicles, making those civil violations instead of misdemeanors, and therefore subject to the jurisdiction of the Rhode Island Traffic Tribunal. And I believe Julie Hamill will be on public testimony to answer questions and further describe the legislation.
Thank you, Senator Oyer. Any questions of committee members? Thank you. Seeing none at this time, we'll move to Senate Bill 680 by Senator Lombardi, also related to motor and other vehicles, adjudication of traffic offenses. Senator Lombardi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. This, too, was put in at the request of the Judiciary. It makes certain amendments to this particular adjudication statute, among which is the removal of the $25 limit on tuition for motorists who have to attend driver education, and also expands the discretion of the judge or magistrate to delay the imposition of any suspension or revocation of a driver's license for a period of up to 30 days. And I'll entertain any questions, if anybody has any.
Any questions at this time? Seeing none, Senator Lombardi, you have the next one, also Senate Bill 681. You may proceed.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. Again, this was put in as well on behalf of the judiciary, and this is going to eliminate the provision that makes it a misdemeanor for a person to solicit a ride in a motor vehicle or backing up on a freeway. It eliminates that that sanction, if you will. It also adds a $100 fine for advertising a motor vehicle for sale on the state highway. And again, I'll entertain any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions of committee members? Seeing none at this time, thank you, Senator. Next, we move to Senate Bill number 404 by Senator Reptakis, an act relating to criminal offenses, disorderly conduct, unlawful interference with traffic. Senator Reptakis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill has been, I introduced this bill back in 2015, and I was looking through some of the letters that were put in by some of the witnesses and claiming that this bill was put in because of the incidents that took place on the highways this past year, especially in Rhode Island and other states. But this bill has been a repeat bill. It's going back in 2015 where we had problems. The problem here, Madam Chair and members of the committee, is that there's a right to protest, but there's not a right to deliberately endanger lives by protesting on a highway. We understand that the right to free speech contains limits. You just can't stand up and yell fire in a crowded theater when there is no fire, because the resulting chaos could endanger people. Now, protesting in a manner that suddenly shuts down a highway is reckless, it's dangerous act, and as reckless as drunk driving, which we just talked about in several bills, or distracting driving. It's just reckless it's like throwing objects on a highway. But what it does, it also threatens people by creating conditions for a serious accident or impacting emergency responses. Now, everybody's got a right to protest, but protest does not allow you to endanger the lives of others. As passionate as we may be about the subject, it's not worth putting someone's life in danger. We want to protest. We can protest at the State House, City Hall, any public space, especially where we're not deliberately trying to disrupt high-speed traffic. And another issue, somebody can say, I can give you top 10 reasons why you shouldn't be protesting on the highway. And we have a rescue heading to the hospital to transport a heart attack victim, and that victim dies because the rescue could not make it to a hospital. What happens if you have an accident and there's injuries that need a hospital to be taken to the hospital in the trauma unit, and that person dies? What happens if you have a first responder and they're heading to a house fire where you have people's lives, children's lives? A fire department, many firefighters know it's seconds, not minutes, seconds getting to a house fire to save lives. And then you have fire trucks stuck on a highway. What happens if you have a domestic violence call for somebody in jeopardy of their lives when police can't get to that house because the highways are blocked? You have a pregnant mother who's in labor. She can't get to the hospital because she's got complications. You're risking the life of the mom and the child. Bank robberies, convenience store being robbed, a home invasion, preventing law enforcement to get somewhere to stop a crime. It's unacceptable. And then what about non-emergency issues where people miss an outpatient surgery and now they have to reschedule maybe 6 or 7 months down the road and their life could be at stake, or you miss a physician appointment? The problem with blocking a highway, especially what took place in Rhode Island, is you're blocking a highway abruptly. Traffic has to come to a halt. High speed, we're talking about high speed braking. And matter of fact, back in, I believe it was last year, in one city, I believe it was in Seattle, all of a sudden, people decided to enter the highway, and a driver tried to get off the highway and ended up killing a 24-year-old woman because he was stuck in traffic, and all of a sudden there was a situation. So it also risks the lives of the protesters. And lastly, there's other issues of people, interstate commerce, where you're going to delay interstate commerce. Someone has to get to an airport, they miss their flights. Well, there's a lot here. So basically, Madam Chair and members of the committee, this is a strong bill, and it sends a strong message. The one only correction I want to make on the bill the bill was supposed to be restricted to highways that have no traffic control devices, meaning like Route 95, 295, 195, Route 10, Route 4, and sections of Route 146. We're talking about traffic traveling at over a normal speed of 35, 45, 55, 60. You know how difficult it is to stop traffic when a group of individuals, protesters, trying to protest on these dangerous highways. There's a lot of other places to protest, your streets, your local streets. I'm not encouraging that, but I mean, come on. You're risking your own life and risking of the public. I understand that people have civil rights. They want to protest, but this bill is not racist, like some of the correspondence I said. It's not about Black Lives Matter. It's about your safety and the public safety. So that's why on some of the language, there's that missing language where it should have just addressed our interstate highways, especially the high-speed highways in our state. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions of Senator Reptakis? Yes, Senator Archambault.
Thank you. I just want to follow up with the senator that, I am a great ally of his and one of his friends in his thought process. And I want to commend him on his passion. I do think on this bill, you may want to step back just a little and I'm not trying to arrest any of your passion or your spirit because it's in your heart. And I respect it greatly and say, maybe I should look at this in two hemispheres, one with injuries, one without. If you get somebody who's civilly disobedient, even though it's on a highway without traffic controls, and law enforcement's able to get it under control and there's no accident, no injuries, as egregious as that is, maybe that could fall into a category or a catch-all with some severe civil penalty or even a misdemeanor. And then if there are injuries, if someone's going to block a highway and injuries result from it, clearly then I don't think you get blowback from anyone saying that, whoa, maybe that should be a felony. Just driving with injuries and without, there are a host of laws that have distinctions where once injuries kick in, you fall into this, and serious injuries, you fall into this higher punitive category. Just a suggestion. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Madam Chair, may I comment, please?
Yes, you may. Go
Sure.
ahead.
And I agree with Senator Archambault. And the bill does have certain sections of the bill that do address bodily injury and a life being lost, meaning death resulting. So again, it's first time we're having this bill since I believe it's 2015. There are sections of the bill that we can work on and maybe just craft a bill where it addresses, especially when an injury occurs or someone's life is lost. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Thank you, my colleague.
Thank you, Senator Reptakis. Any other questions for the senator? Seeing none at this time, we will move to the next bill, Senate Bill 525 by Senator Lombardi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. Let me start in a different direction. This is not a bill that seeks to legalize the use of ATVs on our public highways. It's certainly not intended in any way, shape, or form to do that, nor is it intended to have any encouragement of the unlawful behavior that's been taking place in all of our cities and towns regarding use of ATVs to intimidate people and ultimately, in the most egregious of concerns, to injure members of law enforcement. That's not what this is. This bill seeks to mirror what's going on in other states that allow for ATV clubs. And what happens is, let me just tell you the intent of the bill, that these ATV clubs get dues paid by their members, and then the state of Rhode Island would invoke a registration process as well. These clubs, in turn, would work with our DEM to map out and to maintain and take care of certain trails that are designated for proper use by these ATVs. It's my understanding that there are tens of thousands of ATVs, at least that's what the folks tell me, that are not registered in Rhode Island, that are being used in New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont for this recreational use. and they're going up there. So aside from losing our own beautiful grounds to do this, we're losing needed revenue, I think, for the state coffers. Now, that's the intent. Director Coit got back to me almost virtually instantaneously after the bill was introduced, and through her folks, I fully realize that they've raised a couple of concerns. And one of the concerns that they raise is that certain areas that are owned by the state of Rhode Island are used for things such as hiking, fishing, and other outdoor recreation. It's the hunting part and the fishing part that may certainly pose a conflict of interest or at least not a mutually conducive use of the property. And additionally, there's some federally funded sources of land that have certain requirements on them, namely for use exclusively for hunting, fishing, and other wildlife-related recreation, such as bird watching and the like. So I understand that that's out there. This bill is held for further study. We're seeking to maybe work with DEM to create a happy medium here, such that some of our trails in Rhode Island, and we have hundreds of them, as I understand, can be utilized for this ATV use, which would be registrations, maintenance by the ATV clubs, and revenues to the state of Rhode Island. That's the intent, and I thank you, and I'll certainly answer any questions if anybody has them.
Thank you for that explanation, Senator Lombardi, and for your work with DEM on trying to come up with a bill that works for both. Any questions of the senator on this bill? Seeing none at this time, I'm going to move to Senate Bill 602 by Leader Algier, an act related to motor and other vehicles, abandoned motor vehicles. It authorizes licensed auto body shops to sell or dispose of motor vehicles that have been abandoned and located on their premises. I do not see the leader online. Any questions? Thank you. We'll move to the next one. Senate Bill number 190 by Senator Chair Chacon, an act relating to motor and other vehicles, operators license, safe roads, and mandatory insurance. Chair Chacon.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I've sponsored this bill for over 5 years and appeared before this committee for the same amount of time, urging the passage of this bill. Over the course of the years, I believe that this year is the time for passage. So let me begin my testimony like this. Senators Acosta, Anderson, Archibald, Bell, Corkin, Cano, Chacon, Coyne, DeMario, DePalma, Orr, Kalman, Mack, Mendez, Miller, Murray, Pearson, Posada, Seveny, Cisnowski, Valverde. That's 21 senators that signed on to this bill for passage. In addition to that, there were 2 senators who weren't present when I submitted the bill, and that's Senator Goodwin and Senator Golden, who wanted their names added. Additionally, today, I spoke to one additional senator who said that he knows they're driving already, so why not pass it? That brings us to a total of 24 senators out of 38 that are in favor of the passage of this bill. In addition to that, in 1993, Washington State enacted legislation to allow this privilege. In 2003, New Mexico. 2005, Utah. 2012, Illinois. 2013, California, Colorado, Connecticut, District of Columbia, Maryland, Nevada, and Vermont. 2015, Delaware, Hawaii. In 2019, New Jersey and New York. New York actually passed 2 pieces of legislation for this. In 2019, and also Oregon. 2020, Virginia. That's 16 states in the District of Columbia. Where is Rhode Island? Are we again going to be at the bottom or last on the list? This committee passed gay marriage and abortion rights. We passed a referendum to remove plantations from our state name due to oppression. What about oppression for these individuals? What about this group of undocumented How longer do they have to wait for the privilege to have a restricted license? This is not a full license like every other citizen. This is a restricted license. Do we stop other taxpayers from driving? I don't think so. Are we asking this group to bypass the laws in order to obtain a license? No, we are not. This license is not a form of identification for voting or for official federal purposes and is not eligible for a CDL. I received an email from the Bankers Association reminding us that under federal law, in order to open a bank account, you have to have a real ID. Well, once again, stated right in the bill, it is not a form of proper identification for any federal purposes. To apply, a person must provide identification in two forms of proof of being a Rhode Island resident. Now, getting to the passage of this bill, I completely understand and respect the opinions of senators from districts who have constituents that might oppose this legislation. But please respect the wishes of the 24 senators and their constituents that approve this legislation. Let us remember that this issue is not new. Governor Almond allowed the issuance of these licenses with a taxpayer identification number known as a TIN. In 2003, that great gentleman, Governor Don Carcieri, reversed the authorization of Governor Almond. Enough is enough. I implore you, this committee, and the 24 people that signed on and liked this bill to move for passage of this legislation this session. I think it's enough time. I think we have oppressed these people long enough, and everybody thinks this is strictly a Latina piece of legislation. It's not. It's for all groups that came to this country that are in the process of obtaining documentation and citizenship, and also for people that are coming into this country that do not have the proper documentation as of yet to obtain citizenship, but are working and paying taxes in the state of Rhode Island. I implore you, please allow this to pass. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair
I'm open
Chacon.
to any questions.
Yes. Senator Casada, do you have a question for the sponsor?
I don't have a question. I just want to echo his comment that he just made. I came to this country legally, but not that many people had the same opportunity I had. My husband was one of those people who came to this country illegally. Sorry, my hair all over. My husband didn't have the same opportunity I had, and he came to this country undocumented and his family. But one thing I had to say, this is about safety. I know for many years we've been presenting this. I really applaud my good Senator Chacon for putting this bill every year and to the great report that he just gave to us. 16 states already have undocumented license. Today we made history, making the first women of color become Lieutenant Governor of Rhode Island. I cannot believe that we continue to fail to so many Rhode Islanders to have the opportunity to go to work, to go to school, to drive their children to school, to be able to do the same thing that you do every day with your driving license. He explained it very well. It's not a real ID. They would not qualify for a real ID. The only people who can qualify for a real ID, it will be permanent resident and U.S. citizen. They're not going to be able to use this bill to this card to vote. They're not going to use this for any other purpose than driving. When you have people driving without license, we all paying the consequences. We paying more insurance because people hit and run. We are doing people will have, this is a win-win for the state. People will buy more car, people will register the car, people will have insurance, and people will be not afraid to be on the street driving. I think the purpose of this is because we don't explain it to constituents to make sure so you are be safe on the street, to have the opportunity to give these people, and they all pay taxes like Senator Chicon just explained. I remember my brother-in-law. He was undocumented many years ago. He ended up in the hospital, and he came to me once when he received a bill from the hospital. He said, "I want to pay the bill," even though he didn't have no insurance. He made sure that he called the hospital and he started paying the bill because he thought that was the right things to do. Not all the undocumented come to this country to take advantage like people think. These people come here looking for opportunity, looking for a right to work, looking for something. It's not easy. Many people say, but why they are undocumented? For you to be able to be documented, you have to have a sponsor. And that's what I was for my husband. I was the sponsor of him. And because of him became U.S. citizen, he was able to help his brothers and sisters who was undocumented in this country too. Then it's not as simple, and it's many people who are not undocumented, but they don't have a Social Security. And I would say people who are here with a visa, they will be able to get a driver's license when they're here with a visa, and does not mean they're undocumented. Then there's many ways that we can help these undocumented to be at least to be drive safe, to make all Rhode Island to be safe, to be able to drive on the street, to be able to take the children to work, to the school, they be able to work without being afraid. And those are the people who clean your lot, who clean doing landscaping. They're okay to do landscaping. They doing roof. They doing all kind of work in the state, but they cannot drive. Then I please ask each one of you to please give them the opportunity to have a driving license. It's a 16 state, and Rhode Island is in the middle because Connecticut already passed this bill. Thank you, Senator Chicon, for so hard work in this bill, and I hope that all the members of this committee please help us to pass this bill. At least bring it to the floor, and then let us to make the decision. See, these people will be able to drive, and don't be concerned about real ID, because this is just like Senator Chicon just said. It's a special license only for driving, nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions of Senator Chacon? Seeing none at this time, we also, I know the House sponsor, Chair Williams, would like to comment on this, and when she joins us, we will allow that. Thank you, Senator Chacon. Next up, I believe Senator Morgan has joined us, and she has bill number 410. Senator Morgan, would you like to explain your bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I would, and thank you, members of Judiciary Committee. This bill is pretty straightforward. We keep our records for 7 years, all of our financials, and I have had people call me that they've received motor vehicle violations that they paid, saying that they were unpaid, and no one, saves their records after so many years. So how are you going to prove whether you paid it or not? I think that we should step forward and say, after 7 years, any kind of a violation that they're coming back at me for, unless they've been constantly put through, sent an email, if they've been notified, constantly over the 7 years that they have a vehicle fine or some kind of fine that they weren't paid, that's different. But out of the blue, to come up with a fine that they didn't pay 12 years ago and receive a bill for it, I just think that that's very unfair because people don't keep records.
Thank you, Senator. I'm sorry. Go ahead, continue.
That's okay. I was done.
Any questions of Senator Morgan on her bill? Yes, Senator Raptakis.
Senator Morgan, is this on the local municipalities? Are you getting more complaints from like local municipalities or on the state level, like from like DMV? Where's
DMV,
So mostly it's in the state level. Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Senator Morgan? Seeing none at this time, thank you for joining our committee this evening, Senator.
Thank you.
And our final bill this evening for sponsors to speak on is Senate Bill 776 by Chair Cano. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chairwoman, members of the committee. I really appreciate you taking up this bill. This bill would allow the Division of Motor Vehicles to issue a state identification card to residents unable to establish a lawful presence in the United States upon proof of residency in the state and the tax identification number doing business in this state. The state identification card would not be valid for voting purposes. I just want to make sure that, first of all, I want to say that this bill will complement the driver's license bill that Senator Chacon just spoke about. And I would like to just tell you how this bill came about. First of all, I am an immigrant myself. I'd like to tell you about my family coming to the United States so you can understand that as an immigrant, you have to go through a lot, and there is a lot of misconceptions that people are just here to be illegal and that they don't pay taxes, that they just take services, but they don't contribute to our economy, which is truly misconceptions. I came here in the year of 2000. I was only 16 years old, and I came here because my dad was kidnapped in Colombia. So I'm not sure if you guys knew that, but I came here under political asylum. So while I arrived here under a visa, the process of becoming legal, as many would say, took 7 years. 7 years at that time was a very expedited process. It may not translate to today, those 7 years. First, I had a way to be, that petition for political asylum to be granted. Then after that, I would get a temporary resident card. After that, you have to apply for a permanent resident card. And after that, if your time allows it and you take a test, and very intense test, you could apply for your citizenship. So it is a long period of time. Within that time, I was considered to be undocumented, even though I had a pending application of a status in the United States. All of that time, my parents and I, because I had a way to go to school, we had to pay taxes. With what? With that IT number, the one that is related to this bill. But we were also very subject to many misconceptions and interpretation by people, and we were called illegal. And many times it was very difficult to drive to work. And at that time, I was covered under what Senator Chacon was saying, the driver's license that the state used to have that was rescinded by Governor Casheri afterwards. So I was able to drive, and I was a person that benefited from that. And I was, like Senator Casala say, a safety issue. So at the end of the day, why am I telling my story to all of you today? Because my story is the story of the hardworking community that represent the immigrants of Rhode Island that really come here to contribute, to work hard, to contribute to the economy, to and just to make sure that you have, maybe like my parents and I, have a safety place to live. Because unfortunately, in my country, we couldn't find that. So, long story short, what I want to say here today for members of the committee is I urge you to really, really consider the driver's license for undocumented. And for those people that are also undocumented that doesn't need a driver's license, it may be someone that just need an identification for many purposes. They want to make sure that they could buy, like for example, I saw an article today, buy liquor in the liquor store and contribute to the economy. They could use that ID to show that they are here, able to contribute to the economy if they pay taxes. So I just wanted to relay the message and say thank you to Senator Chicon for being a champion of the immigrant community. Thank you for providing the opportunity to year by year introduce this bill and speaking on behalf of the very hard-working immigrant community. And to Senator Quesada, your testimony and what you talk about your husband and his brothers and my testimony, I hope that it brings her home, because the reason why I ran for office was specifically because my parents instilled in me and my brothers that we need to contribute back to the country that opened the doors for us and gave us a safe place and an opportunity to have a better life. So I thank my parents for their hard work and for giving us that opportunity. And I thank, the people that have believed in my abilities to contribute and to have a voice, because that is why I became a senator. And just like Senator Quesada said, we do have today a historic nomination for Lieutenant Governor as an immigrant person, a woman, hardworking person. And it would be the same thing for Senator Quesada and for me. We came here to contribute. This is the American dream. And I urge you to really consider these two bills, Senator Chicon's bill for the driver's license and my bill to provide a state IDs to the hardworking taxpayers of our state. They contribute and they're here to give to the community, and I really urge you to pass those two. And I'll be happy to take any questions, and thank you.
Thank you, Chair Cano, for your personal story this afternoon and for your testimony. Do we have any questions of Chair Cano at this time? Yes, Senator Quesada.
It's not a question. I just wanted to said Senator Cano, the city of Providence is providing those ID, and I can see how many people are being calling to request those ID. I think would be a very great idea to they be able to have a state ID, but I think having the license, like we said at the beginning, from Senator Chicon bill, it would be both. Something great. They need it sometime, not just it's just to have an ID to provide to say who you are. If you go to the doctor, they require an ID. To even go to the store, like Senator Cano just said, to go and buy liquid, they need to know your age. To go inside a disco, you need to have an ID to show your age too. Then it's for many reasons that you need an ID, and it's many times they require they have an ID from their country, but it's not the same to have an ID from the state you live and you contribute. Like she said, all these they pay taxes. A lot of them even have bank account. I just want to say the other day I went to do my vaccination at Clinica Esperanza, and I was very surprised. They was asking for an ID for you to be able to have the vaccination. Then it's just that it's something that you need to be able to be, and we all know that everywhere you go, you need to set an identification to say who you say you is. Then having an ID or having a driver's license is a need. It's not because they want to. It's something that they need to be able to live in this country, and for them to be able to do what we do every day. Go to the grocery market, go to a liquor store, out for dancing, or for any other reason, even to go to the doctor or even to get vaccinated today, they require you to have an ID. Thank you.
Chair, may I comment something else?
Yes, go ahead. You may.
Thanks, Senator Quezada. I just want to also say thank you, but I forgot to mention that what you said is so true. The city of Providence already provided ID, and that statewide will also be a revenue generator because a lot of people will definitely pay for them to make sure that they have this ID. That they already pay taxes, in the state. They just need to have that identification. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair Cano. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Very good, seeing none at this time. Thank you for joining us this evening, Senator Cano. Okay, with that, let's see. We now will take testimony from the public. For those members of the public who are signed up to testify, if you would kindly state the bill number you are testifying on, and if you're representing an agency, or we'd like you to also give us that information. And if you're speaking on multiple bills, if you could please state the bill number first before you begin your testimony. With that, I'm going to revert back to the beginning of the agenda with Senate Bill number 58. I believe we have Mike DeLauro, Rhode Island Public Defenders, on the line. And welcome to the committee, Mr. DeLauro. Mike, I believe you're speaking on several bills this evening. The first is Senate Bill 58. You may proceed.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. With your permission this afternoon, my testimony regarding Bill 58, Bill 410, and Bill 680 is identical. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to testify on all of them at once.
Yes.
At one time.
Yes, very good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So each of these bills, which is why I'm speaking about them together, deal with the issue of court costs. And it's the reason that I filed one piece of written testimony, as well as some additional materials that I'll mention briefly later. So the public defender has been interested in the issue of court costs, as you know, for a long, long time. Our views on court costs are informed by the statutory obligations that you've honored us with to represent indigent people accused of crime in our state courts. And really, there are three primary points that guide our position on each of these three pieces of legislation. The first is that we think it is wrong to use the courts system to raise money. Number two, it's been proven that using the courts to raise money is an inefficient way to raise money for the state. Third, using the court system to raise money for the state is unfair. It has an inordinate negative impact on the poor. It inhibits their ability of offenders to rehabilitate themselves and become productive members of society. So as you know, we've been working on this issue for a long time, going back to the year 2007. Some of you were here then, most of you were not. In 2007, the Family Life Center, now Open Doors, wrote a fabulous report that I provided to you electronically. I also gave you a policy brief that's a great 2-page summary of the report. Here is what Open Doors, then the Family Life Center, found. Some of these things are shocking. They're still shocking to me. They found that the most common reason people in Rhode Island are put in jail is court debt. 17% of all jailings and almost 2,500 incidents a year. 1/3 of those jailed sit in jail for over 3 days, and 11% spend more than a week in jail. 11 people sat in jail for over 2 weeks in 2007 for court debt, one for 41 days. In 15% of the cases, the state spends more on jail time than is owed. The total cost of the state is about $500,000 per year for incarcerating these defendants. Most of these people are homeless, mentally or physically disabled, and unemployed. So this report informed a comprehensive series of reforms that the General Assembly enacted in 2008. And when I say comprehensive, I mean the way in which court costs were assessed, collected, in some cases waived, the way in which courts are supposed to determine who is indigent and who isn't, were all part of this legislative package that passed in 2008. And the Senate was a leader, Senator Metz in particular was a leader on this issue. As time went by, we started hearing that our judges were not observing, were not following the reforms that the General Assembly enacted in 2008. There was a report by Brown University. There were reports in the College Hill Independent that these reforms are being observed in the breach, and that the systematic way in which indigency and ability to pay was not being observed by our courts. Some of you attended the Court Cost Summit that my office put on in January of 2020, and one of the best things that came out of that was a recognition, and the courts correctly recognized in an article by Katie Mulvaney in the Providence Journal last January. The court very honestly said, yeah, we haven't been doing the best job in following these things. So that's the bad news. The good news is that there is progress being made. It's glacial at times, but progress is being made. I'll just tell you a little bit about that. Another one of the resources that I gave you is the report of the National Task Force on Fines, Fees, and Bail Practices. This extraordinary document was, and this task force was created by the Conference of Chief Justices and the Conference of State Court Administrators. And coincidentally, and this isn't only in Rhode Island moment, the website of these organizations state that the president-elect of the Conference of Chief Justices is our very own Justice Sattel, the Chief Justice of our Supreme Court. And as for the Conference of State Court Administrators, our very own Joseph Baxter is the immediate past president of that organization, according to their website. So, what do they recommend? What is recommended is by this task force really best practices in this area, which come down to the following. Principle number one, you have this in the materials I gave you. It should be made explicit in authority providing for courts at all levels that while they have authority to impose legal financial obligations and collect the revenues derived from them, they are not established to be a revenue-generating arm of either the executive or legislative branch of government. Principle 1.6, I'll just read you a part of it. While situations occur where user fees and surcharges are necessary, such fees and surcharges should always be minimized and should never fund activities outside the justice system. Fees and surcharges should only be established for administration of justice purposes. Administration of justice should be narrowly defined, and then it goes on, and you can look at it yourself when you have time.
Yes,
So
we have that.
how does
Yeah,
this
we definitely have that information, and
Great.
we will take a look at that.
I'm just about finished. If I can just say, this is the reason that we oppose Senate Bill 58. Certainly it is well-intentioned, but using the criminal justice system to raise money for something, however worthy it might be, that has nothing to do with criminal justice is wrong. Senator Morgan's bill, court debt, we see that bill as a way for the court to write off bad debt. There's a case on the court's website of a defendant who owes the court $40,000 in court costs. If I said the name, you would recognize it. He is serving 3 consecutive life without parole sentences. He is never going to get out of the prison. What is the point in carrying this $40,000 that he owes the court? Lastly, Bill 680, dealing with the DWI, the fees for DWI. Right now, it can't go above $25. It could be argued as a legitimate expense. What we would suggest is, if you're going to allow that to rise, that you put in a provision that allows the judge in appropriate cases to waive the fee. So with that, I've gone on way too long, and I apologize for that. I'll take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mike DeLauro? Seeing none at this time. Did you also have 314?
Yes, and I'll be super brief on that one.
Thank you.
I heard what Senator Archibald had to say. He's absolutely correct. It's a very thoughtful process that went into this bill. As it continues to move forward, there is some other tweaks that need to be made. Respectfully, we'd like to be involved in that process, as Senator Archibald mentioned before.
So noted. Any questions of committee members? Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members.
Thank you. Next, we have, I believe, Rebecca Elwell. And we are still on Senate Bill 58. Welcome to the committee, Ms. Elwell. You are testifying on Senate Bill 58.
Yes, that is correct. Good evening, Chairwoman and members of the committee. My name is Rebecca Elwell, and I have been a certified prevention specialist in the state of Rhode Island for the past 20 years, having been a lifelong resident of Rhode Island prior to that. The reason that I am supporting Bill number 58 is, as a prevention specialist, I have been uniquely aware of the level of funding required and the level of funding that is non-existent for prevention services in Rhode Island. BHGDH has a contract with 7 regional coalitions across Rhode Island, each tasked with providing substance use prevention and behavioral health promotion across the lifespan. All BHGDH funding currently received by these regional coalitions is coming from federal sources. Many years ago, back in 1986 or perhaps 1987, the Rhode Island Substance Abuse Prevention Act, originally known as the Bramley Bill, became law. That law established a substance abuse prevention task force in each municipality in Rhode Island, and it came with funding that was originally from an assessment on traffic violations. Sometime a little bit more than, or right around 20 years ago, those fines were no longer restricted and used for prevention. They went into the general fund. More recently, probably over the last 15 years, there has been virtually zero designated funding from the state of Rhode Island. All of the sources of prevention funding through BHGDH has come through federal sources. In 2017, the municipal coalitions that were originally set up by the state law were reconfigured by BHGDH into regional coalitions, of which we have 7. Those were reconfigured to be more efficient and more effective in meeting the prevention needs across the state. The regional coalitions use evidence-based strategies to address underage drinking, use marijuana use, impaired driving, prevention of prescription drug misuse, and illicit opiate use, as well as a host of other risk behaviors, including bullying, mental health, and suicide. Prior to COVID, our youth prevention data was tracking in the right direction. Almost across the board, we were seeing reductions in youth substance use and an increase in the perceptions that minimize that substance use. Currently, without state dollars from our general fund, there is no designated Rhode Island source of revenue. This absolute lack of commitment is astounding to me, given the magnitude of the substance use and mental health challenges facing our state. It is time for a designated revenue stream to be established to support the efforts of statewide substance abuse and also to have the state meet its commitment to the Rhode Island Substance Abuse Prevention Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Elwell. Any questions of committee members? Seeing none at this time, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Stephen Brown of the ACLU of Rhode Island. Welcome to the committee. Stephen, you are testifying, I believe, on 58, Bill number 404 and 190.
That is correct. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Stephen Brown on behalf of the ACLU of Rhode Island. I will start with S58, which is the bill that you've been hearing that would impose a $250 substance abuse education fee on people convicted of DUI or refusing to submit to a breathalyzer. Certainly funding these programs is important, but as Mr. DeLauro indicated, the courts should not be the way to do it. The one additional point I want to make is just give you some basic information about what the penalties are right now if you're convicted of either DUI or refusing to submit to a breathalyzer. Right now, a fine must be imposed of up to a generic fine of up to $500. There is a $500 highway safety assessment fine that is imposed. There is a $200 chemical assessment fine. There is attendance at a DUI course, which the offender has to pay for. And then, of course, there are the tangential penalties that come, suspension of license, possible payment of an ignition interlock system. So the costs are enormous, and under the statute, none of them can be suspended. So tacking on yet another fine like this only traps people in this cycle of government debt that keeps them insecure in terms of job security, housing security. And so we urge the committee to oppose this legislation despite its very good intentions. The second bill is S404, Senator Raptakis's bill, making it a felony to interfere with traffic on a highway. We strongly oppose this legislation on a number of grounds. We think it's unnecessary, it's overbroad, and it targets in a discriminatory fashion individuals who are engaged in public protest. Senator Raptakis talked about the penalties that are presently in place for various drunk driving offenses and so forth. I think it's important to keep in mind just how heavy-handed this particular bill is, which has a 3-year sentence for a first offense, including 60 days, which cannot be suspended. Compare that to a first-time drunk driving offense, where the maximum penalty is 1 year. Compare that to driving so as to endanger, resulting in physical injury, has a maximum 2-year penalty. And yet here we want to impose a 3-year sentence on individuals who are engaging in public protest. That's not to say they have a right to engage in that protest, but it certainly does not deserve the types of penalties that are available here. We know that last year during the Black Lives Matter protests, there was a brief shutdown of an I-95 ramp right in downtown Providence by local protesters, and a number of those individuals were arrested by the police. There was no need for a special law in order to deal with that. And so for those reasons, we hope that the committee will reject this legislation. Then finally, I just want to express our strong support for S-190, which is a driver's license bill sponsored by Senator Chacon. We also support the companion ID bill by Senator Cano. We really commend Senator Chacon for all the work he's done over the years in pressing for this bill. I think the testimony he gave describing it, the further testimony you heard from the two other senators, Senator Cano and Senator Quezada, I think really explained why this is important, why it's necessary, and why it is protective for everybody to pass legislation like this. And And like Senator Chacon, we hope that this will be the year that the Senate and the House finally pass this very important bill. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions of Steve? Yes, Senator Reptakis.
Madam Chair, I just want to make a correction. It's only 60 days that the sentence, I believe, cannot be suspended, not 3 years. A strict 3-year sentence that Mr. Brown has said. I think I'm looking at the bill, and it's first 60 days of said sentence shall be ineligible for the benefit of suspension, deferral, or probation. So it's not 3 years that they're not eligible. It's only 60 days. Thank you.
If I
Mr.
could
Brown,
just briefly respond.
Yes, of course.
I hope I didn't misspeak. What I meant to say was that the maximum penalty is 3 years. There is a mandatory 60-day sentence, and I was comparing that to those other crimes that I mentioned.
Okay, maybe that's where the confusion was. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions of Steve? Seeing none at this time, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
We will now proceed to Senate Bill 685 by Chair Sosnowski. This is an act relating to motor vehicles, other vehicles, where it extends the look-back period for third and subsequent driving under the influence. I believe we have Ryan Holt from the Attorney General's Department on the line. Ryan, welcome to the committee. You may proceed.
Hi, Madam Chair.
Yes, you may proceed on Senate Bill 685.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Madam Chair and ladies and gentlemen. This is Ryan Holt, the Director of Legislative Affairs for Attorney General Noronha, speaking in support of Senate Bill 685, which Senator Sosnowski introduced on our office's behalf. I know that both she and Senator Reptakis both gave pretty great and thorough statements in support of this bill that I'll seek to supplement now. We think this is a common sense approach to make our roads safer. This would allow this office a longer look-back period in which we can seek sentencing enhancements for those who are frequent offenders of our DUI laws and who refuse breathalyzer tests, moving that from 5 to 10 years for a third and subsequent DUI. So these are frequent and dangerous offenders on our roads. Rhode Island is one of only 7 states to have such a short look-back period at 5 years. Most, I would say the majority of states nationally have it at 10 years, including, our neighbors in Connecticut. Massachusetts, as Senator Reptakis noted, is a lifetime. New Hampshire is 10 years. New York, 15 years. So I think you're kind of getting the picture there that, Rhode Island's an outlier here. We don't want to be. We want to be able to, seek serious sentencing enhancements when they are warranted, and we think they're warranted here, and this would go a long way in helping us do that. So with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions of Ryan? I don't see any at this time. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We will now move on to Bill 318 by Senator Archambault, an act relating to motor vehicle and other vehicles passing, use of lanes, and rules of the road. I believe Liza Birkin is on the line from Providence Streets Coalition. Welcome to the committee, Miss Birkin. Do we have Miss Birkin on the line?
Hello?
Oh, yes, Miss Birkin. Welcome to the committee. And you may begin your testimony. I believe you're speaking on Senate Bill number 318 and 190.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much to the committee for the opportunity to speak on both of these bills, which I, as a road safety advocate, believe will go a long way to protecting people just trying to get around. So my name is Liza Birkin. I'm the organizer of the Providence Streets Coalition. And while I choose to bike and walk, most of the vulnerable road users which means anybody traveling outside of cars, are made up of youth who are too young to drive, people who can't afford a car, people who can't drive due to disabilities, new immigrants and refugees, people who are legally barred from driving, and people who are working on the roads outside of cars, police, construction, EMTs. So while riding and walking, I've been nearly hit and intimidated by people driving cars and other vehicles countless times. It's just a fact of life. But most of these incidents go unreported, partly because the law doesn't really acknowledge vulnerable road users. I support the Senate Bill 318 because it recognizes users like me as legitimate travelers in Rhode Island. In addition, it sends a powerful signal that our lives and wellness are important and worth protecting, the same as if we were driving. Because crashes involving vulnerable road users are much more likely to cause life-altering injury or death, I think there's a glaring mismatch between the harm sustained by victims and consequences for drivers. So I encourage the committee to pass it. And on 190, licenses for all, it's just another amazing bill that will really support road safety. There's ample research from around the country and right here in Rhode Island from Roger Williams Law School and the Rhode Island Latino Policy Institute showing how driver's licenses for all creates safer streets and better opportunities for our immigrant neighbors. We basically have set up a transportation system that requires people to drive in order to survive, which they do unlicensed and uninsured. So allowing undocumented folks to get a license will require them to complete driver's education and pass a road test, which has obvious safety benefits for everyone in the state, as well as being proven that average insurance rates will go down for all drivers. But not just the safety argument, it's definitely the moral thing to do. While driving is both necessary for economic security and traps people in poverty, I will continue fighting to make more affordable and sustainable modes of travel viable. But until then, we really just can't lock anyone out of opportunity. Anybody who primarily walks and bikes should be for this. We, as vulnerable road users, will benefit greatly from having more of our neighbors getting driver's education and insurance. And we, as neighbors, will benefit greatly from our fellow residents getting access to more economic security and opportunity. Thanks. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Birkin. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none at this time, thank you for joining us this evening. Next up, we have Kathleen Gannon from Rhode Island Bicycle Coalition. Welcome to the committee, Ms. Gannon. You are on to speak on Bill 318.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair Coyne, members of the committee, for the opportunity to support Senate Bill 318, the Vulnerable Road Users Bill. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Vice Chair Aclu, and co-sponsors for their leadership on this issue. My name is Kathleen Gannon. I'm the board chair for the Rhode Island Bicycle Coalition. The Rhode Island Bicycle Coalition is a statewide advocacy organization committed to making cycling more accessible and especially safer for all residents. RIBIKE supports Senate Bill 318 for a number of reasons. First, it defines vulnerable road users, and importantly, it recognizes them as legitimate road users under the law. By enacting this legislation, Rhode Island will explicitly codify rights for people outside of cars to use the public way. In addition, we're in favor of Senate Bill 318 because drivers who fail to take due care and cause a person's injury or death should be held responsible. Unsafe behavior is worthy of punishment. Injury and death are appropriate aggravating circumstances, and those responsible of more harm rightfully bear greater responsibility. Victims of reckless drivers also deserve some justice. This bill is a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, there is an epidemic of people dying on the roadway. 2020 was a particularly difficult year for vulnerable road users, with 17 pedestrians and 2 cyclists killed in the state. And the numbers for this year, by the way, are tracking that horrible trend. We need to recognize, too, that the problem is not new in Rhode Island. For most of the last decade, Rhode Island has exceeded the national average for pedestrian deaths. It's beyond time to offer protection and deterrence that this law would provide. So many things have changed in the last year, but let me just highlight 2. Firstly, many, many more people are choosing active transportation since the COVID crisis. There's been a huge increase in biking, including biking among families with children. This means that there are just many more vulnerable road users to be concerned about. Secondly, the statewide long-range transportation plan was formally adopted in 2020. One component of that plan is the bicycle mobility plan, which explicitly calls for vulnerable road users legislation. This legislation was important last year. It's even more relevant and important now, and these protections are just plain long overdue. I urge you to join me in support of Senate Bill 318. In doing so, you will send a powerful signal that every individual life is important and worth protecting in or out of a car. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions for Ms. Gannon? Seeing none at this time, thank you for joining us this evening. And now we move to Senate Bill number 401 by Senator Archambault, an act relating to motor and other vehicles, safety, responsibility, administration, security. I believe the first caller will be Bradford Booth. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Booth. I believe you're representing the Division of Motor Vehicles and speaking on Senate Bill 401.
I am. Madam Chair, honorable committee members, thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. My name is Brad Booth. I'm Chief Legal Counsel for the DMV. DMV thanks Senator Archambault for introducing Senate Bill 401 and strongly urges its passage. This bill, despite its length, simply eliminates the DMV's authority to impose two types of administrative suspensions on motorists involved in accidents who lack insurance. What this bill does not do is allow uninsured motorists to evade appropriate court-imposed penalties for their failure to maintain insurance. First type of DMV administrative suspension that would be eliminated is for failure to deposit security following an accident. The current suspension process commences when an insurer sends to the DMV a report of property damage suffered by its insured at the hands of an uninsured party. The DMV then conducts a hearing and will suspend the license and registrations of the uninsured party if we come to the conclusion that there is a reasonable possibility of a judgment being rendered against the uninsured party. Not a guarantee of a judgment or even a substantial likelihood of a judgment, but a reasonable possibility. This low threshold in effect allows the DMV to determine ultimate liability for the accident in a preliminary administrative hearing. Such a consequential decision should be made by a jury or a judge who grants a judgment after a full trial. And when a judgment is entered, the DMV will continue, as it currently does, to suspend the license and registrations of the uninsured party when it is notified that judgment remains unpaid. The second type of DMV administrative suspension that would be eliminated is for the failure to have insurance at the time of the accident. This process is a holdover from the days when the only tool the DMV had to enforce insurance requirements was the retroactive examination of accident reports. This process is now duplicative of two separate avenues of insurance enforcement, the first being by law enforcement who retain the ability under this bill to cite uninsured motorists at the time of an accident. Tickets will be issued and again adjudicated in court. Second avenue is at the DMV itself, where since 2015, through the Electronic Insurance Verification Program, we proactively identify motor vehicles that lack insurance and take appropriate action against the uninsured's license and registrations. In the 6 years of administering this program, we've successfully reduced the number of Rhode Island registered, uninsured motor vehicles from 10% to 4%. This equates to over 50,000 less uninsured motor vehicles on our roadways. We continue to develop methods to enhance this program to further reduce that percentage. Eliminating this holdover retroactive review of accident reports will free up our resources in the adjudication office to continue to make improvements to this program and to all other areas of customer service within that office. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Any questions of committee members? I don't see any at this time. Thank you for joining us this evening and for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Professor Andrew Horowitz. Good evening, Professor. You are on. Welcome to the committee, and you may proceed with your testimony on Senate Bill 401.
Thanks so much. It's my pleasure to be here. I unfortunately was not in a position to be able to watch or listen to what preceded me, but I do know that Brad Booth has just testified, and I have a lot of faith in Brad to have very effectively presented the issues, but I'm happy to spend just a minute or two, and I'll be very brief, sharing my perspective. For those who don't know me, my name is Andy Horwitz. I'm a law professor at Roger Williams University, testifying not on behalf of the university, but in my private capacity. I run the criminal defense clinic at the school, and in that capacity, I do a lot of work for the indigent population in Rhode Island, and in particular, some subgroups within that population. I represent a lot of veterans. I represent a lot of people experiencing homelessness. And one of the things that I've worked on a lot over the last several years is driver's license restoration, which is a huge issue for the indigent population. It is an enormous obstacle for people who are trying to get back on their feet, trying to work productively, trying to support their families. So license restoration is an enormous issue in the state of Rhode Island. And one issue that I've come across frequently is an issue that this bill seeks to remedy. And I am entirely and wholeheartedly in support of this bill and what it seeks to do. There are a variety of people who find themselves in a position where they drive without insurance. That's obviously not a situation that we should condone in any way, shape, or form, and we have a variety of mechanisms to punish people who drive without insurance, and in particular who drive without insurance and get into accidents. And those mechanisms for punishment I have no concerns with and strike me as completely appropriate. What this bill seeks to stop is what I view as an incredible abuse of the process. When somebody is in an accident and there's another insurance company involved, that insurance company presently has the ability to simply attach a hold on the person's driver's license, which results in a permanent, indefinite suspension of that person's driver's license, subject only to the whim of the insurance company. And having tried to negotiate with these insurance companies on behalf of poor people, I can tell you that I frequently run into complete and total intransigence and unwillingness to cooperate or have a reasonable conversation. The end result being lose-lose. The insurance company gets no money, and the motorist is forever prohibited from getting a driver's license. And I have simply never understood why the state is expected to, and in fact forced to, because the DMV doesn't want to play this role, forced to be a debt collector for a private entity. There are lots of debts that are owed by lots of people, and there are lots of enforcement mechanisms allowable under our law, but there's no other scenario that I'm familiar with in which a private company gets to use the power of the government and take away somebody's license as a means of debt collection. It just strikes me as wildly inappropriate, totally unfair, terrible public policy, and I'm very, very hopeful that this committee will pass this bill and bring this practice to an end. So thank you for listening to my views. If people have questions, I'd certainly be happy to answer.
Thank you, Professor. Any questions of committee members? I don't see any at this time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have, we're going to move to Senate Bill 675, which is Motor Vehicle and Other Vehicles, Motor Vehicle Reparations Act. I believe we have Julie Hamill from Rhode Island Judiciary on the line. Welcome to the committee, Ms. Hamill. I believe you're testifying on several bills. If you would just state the number first and then proceed with your testimony and then continue on for the remainder of the bills.
I would be happy to. Thank you, Chairwoman Coyne, and good evening, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. My name is Julie Hamill. I serve as General Counsel to the Rhode Island Supreme Court, and I am here speaking on behalf of 6 different bills that the Judiciary has requested be submitted for your consideration this year, and I will try to make my comments as brief as possible. With respect to Senate Bill number 675, I thank Chairwoman Coyne for introducing the bill on behalf of the Judiciary. It was submitted at the request of the Traffic Tribunal. As you know, all vehicles registered in the state of Rhode Island are required to be covered by motor vehicle insurance. What Senate Bill 675 does is essentially close the loophole whereby a motorist could avoid procuring insurance simply by not registering a vehicle in the state of Rhode Island. The proposed change is consistent with other motor vehicle statutes that impose penalties when a vehicle should be registered in Rhode Island but is not. So that's essentially what Senate Bill 675 seeks to accomplish. And I can pause there for any questions and move on to the next bill, if that's okay.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any questions for Julie from any members of the committee? No, hearing none. Thanks. Why don't you move on to the next one? Thank you.
Thank you. The next bill is Senate Bill 676, and I thank Senator Oyer, who I spoke to this afternoon, for introducing this on our behalf. The bill, again, was requested by the Traffic Tribunal to clarify that violations of Chapter 31, Section 34 of the general laws, which pertain to rental vehicles, are subject to civil penalties and are under the jurisdiction of the Traffic Tribunal. It's really a clarification cleanup bill. It would also add the appropriate fines to the applicable schedule of violations. And that is essentially what that bill seeks to do.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any members of the committee? No, hearing none. Go ahead, please. Next bill.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 680, and I thank Senator Lombardi for submitting this bill on the judiciary's behalf. It seeks to accomplish two different changes to the adjudication of traffic offenses statute contained in 3141.1-6. Number one, when a motorist is ordered to attend driver retraining, there are often costs imposed for attendance by the education provider. The statutory cap of $25, which is in the legislation now, is well below the standard cost for these programs. And I was actually gratified to hear Mike DeLauro acknowledge that this might actually be a legitimate cost. But it is low. Currently, DMV offers driver retraining programs for a cost of $165. So we really have no position if a cap were to be imposed. That would be fine as long as it's in keeping with what the going rate is for this education. The second change that Senate Bill 680 seeks to accomplish is to slightly adjust the final subsection E, and it would give the court the flexibility to delay the imposition of a license suspension or to impose it immediately following the conclusion of a case if a judge or magistrate finds that such suspension is warranted based on the motorist's driving record and the violation that brought them before the traffic tribunal. And I'm happy to answer any questions on that bill before moving on to my fourth one.
Thank you. Any questions by any member of the committee? Hearing none, go ahead, Julie.
Okay, thank you. Senate Bill 681 was another bill that was submitted by Senator Lombardi, and thank you, Senator. This bill would clarify that certain sections of the general laws entitled freeways are violations subject to the jurisdiction of the traffic tribunal and are not criminal misdemeanors. It would also include those violations on the appropriate schedule of violations. Okay, and I can move on to Senate Bill 682, which was introduced by Senator Sosnowski. This one requires a little more conversation. Currently, General Laws 312230 is entitled Text Messaging While Operating a Motor Vehicle, and it prohibits a person from composing, reading, or sending text messages while driving a motor vehicle. One of the exceptions in the statute allows a wireless handset to be used for navigation. As a result, what we're seeing in the traffic tribunal is that many motorists who appear will admit that they were operating while holding their phone, but they will claim that they were operating their music services or using a navigation app while operating the vehicle. So in an effort to clarify that the conduct intended to be prohibited by this legislation includes any operation of a phone, we are proposing that the statute be amended to prohibit an operator from holding a wireless handset while operating the motor vehicle. And it's important to note that the bill would still preserve the exception for using a GPS or any type of navigational tool, provided that the phone or other device is mounted to the vehicle when it's being used for navigational purposes. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding that bill.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any questions by any members of the committee? Hearing none, no. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you. I just have one more.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. 683, right? Go ahead.
Yes, it's Senate Bill 683. General Laws 312231 was enacted in 2017, and it prohibited people from holding their phones to engage in a phone call while driving. There was a $100 fine for that offense. And the law provided that any first offender could have their fine waived if they came to court and provided proof that they had acquired a hands-free accessory prior to coming to court. But what we're seeing is that the law has been on the books for some time. Hands-free technology has only improved since this law's initial passage. So what we're proposing is an amendment which would sunset that first offender provision. We're proposing that after September 1st, 2021, no first offender will be entitled to have their fee waived by showing proof of having acquired a hands-free accessory. We think that at this point, the public has had ample notice of our hands-free laws in the state, and so the waiver provision really is no longer necessary. And that will officially conclude my testimony unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any questions by any members of the committee? Hearing none, no. Thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony. Our next caller is Jacqueline Goldman, and we're now moving on to Senate Bill 404. Good evening, Ms. Goldman.
Hi, hello.
Hi, how are you? You may proceed. Welcome to the committee. You may proceed.
Great. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you taking the time to hear my testimony. I know that you have a lot of bills on the docket, so I'll keep it short. So my name is Jacqueline Goldman, and I'm here to oppose S404. So I understand Senator Raptaki's idea of trying to protect both drivers and people who would be demonstrating, and appreciate especially the clarification at the beginning of the hearing that this is supposed to specify things like I-95 and these kind of bigger highways. I would still submit that jailing people from 5 to 30 years, which I believe was in the bill text, is drastic and has many more negative implications for protesters or for people who are blocking highways or who are going to be impacted by this bill. So I work in public health, and I work specifically with people who've experienced an incarceration. And once someone is in jail, they are then barred from a lot of housing and employment and healthcare access and things like that. And it really starts this really horrendous and cascade into a lot of just really difficult standard of life things, and can be really detrimental to someone's life and well-being. And so I understand that the idea is to protect people, both the drivers, the people who need to get to the hospital, and to the people who would be demonstrating or blocking traffic. But this very intense amount of incarceration is really the wrong way to do it. And if anything, will have many more detrimental impacts than there would be now. So that's really it. That's all I wanted to share. I'm sure you've heard a lot of testimony on this. And so I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Ms. Goldman. Are there any questions by any members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Our next caller is Ames Colt on the same bill. Good evening, Ames Colt.
Hello.
Yes, good evening. You may proceed.
Thank you. This bill is totally unnecessary and will curtail our First Amendment rights to free speech. It is particularly worrisome because this will throw people in jail that do not need to be there. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions by any members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much. Our next caller is Andrew Poyant, also testifying on Senate Bill 190. Good evening, Andrew Poyant.
Hello.
Hi, Hi,
can
welcome
you
to
hear
the
me?
committee. You may proceed.
Hi, my name is Andrew Poya. I'm a Providence resident, and I'm calling in opposition to Senate Bill 404. It impedes on our right of free speech, and a lot of people like to invoke Martin Luther King's name on Martin Luther King Day, and he was in favor and has blocked roadways and bridges. And I think, if people are in a position that they really need to be heard, that is one way to demonstrate how they want change. So I hope that that no one votes for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Any questions for this individual from any members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much. Our next caller is Molly. Sorry, we couldn't get that next call. We're going to go to Alex Taylor. Any luck? Okay, thanks, Jake. Good evening, Alex Taylor.
Hi.
Yes, welcome to the committee. You may proceed.
Okay, thank you. So I am responding to Bill 404 about the felony charges for blocking streets. I did hear the introduction to the bill enough to know that one of the sponsors is talking about maybe amending it, but I'm going to respond initially to the bill as it's written today. So my first response, I guess, is about the focusing of the bill that includes both highways and federal highways and state highways. So I just say that Rhode Island is a very small state, and a lot of those state highways are also effectively local roads. And I did a quick search, not exhaustive, but I noticed that the seats of government for all of the co-sponsors in their districts sit adjacent to a state highway. And I think that it is unreasonable to put this kind of limitation on the access road to seat of government where people would be very likely to protest. It seems extremely easy for enforcement of something like this to get out of control. These are felony penalties with a lot of knock-on impacts in people's lives, and significant prison time, mandatory minimums, really terrible setup. So it seems really out of scale and unrealistic. I do appreciate that one of the sponsors talked about walking that back, but it's a little bit sort of unnerving about the thought that's gone into this, that a basic error like that made it into the bill that came before the committee. Second thing would just be that laws like this are often used punitively by police against people that they find irritating, and this seems like putting a really big stick in the hands of police that don't necessarily always behave in ways that I think society deserves. So an example would be, people are routinely charged with assault for semi-involuntary, reflexive actions like putting their hand up when a cop is hitting them. People have been charged with assault and battery for bleeding on a police officer after they have been injured by said police officer. So, it's not outside the realm of possibility that a law like this could be punitively used, like, I saw your foot on the street, and things accelerating like that. And this is the thing that happens, this kind of enforcement happens across the country. And, that is a thing that we would want to be really careful about, and is a reason why this bill should not proceed to law. I mentioned mandatory minimums in passing, but this is a tool that seems to be designed for generating fear. And we live in a time where there are a lot of really large and pressing issues on people's minds, and there's a lot of reason for people to come out and make their voices heard about the policies that are going to affect them and their families. This seems that these mandatory minimums, have a really strong chilling effect on people's willingness to come out. What kind of danger am I putting my family in if I go out to make my voice heard and then this law gets enforced on me and I go to prison for a year or 3 years or 5 years, or up to 30, I think was one of the potential penalties here. So it seems like a really clear chilling of First Amendment protected free speech, this bill should not proceed to law. The last thing that I want to touch in is just this inclusion of the blocking emergency vehicles. This is a thing that's come up in legislation in a lot of different places around the country, and just has this real won't someone think of the children kind of appeal to hypothetical terrible outcomes. Highways have been blocked in protests across the country. Other streets have been blocked in protests across the country and around the world. And I think that if there was a serious danger of emergency vehicles being blocked in a way that endangered people's lives, there would be solid examples of that brought up instead of a lot of hypothetical. The main sponsor of the bill spent a good chunk of his testimony listing a whole bunch of, but what if maybe this one scenario, someone could miss their flight, all the way down to, someone could die. If that is a real problem, you should be coming up with concrete examples of where this kind of thing is actually impacting people's lives before you put a very powerful tool in the hands of law enforcement that could have really serious impacts on the public's ability to make their voice heard. Especially this emergency vehicle blocking thing. it just seems really vague. The way that the law is phrased, or the bill is phrased right now, it talks about intentional. I can't remember what the third one, but reckless was one of the possible conditions that could trigger this. And I'm just curious about what the vision is for other reckless actions that cause traffic to be blocked. What if reckless driving causes a car accident? Is this a penalty that would also be applied to that driver? Are we talking about people elevating auto accidents that cause backups due to clearing the roadway and things like that? Are they also facing felony and large prison terms for that? This does not seem like a well thought out bill that is addressing a real problem. This seems a lot more like a revenge fantasy by people who have been inconvenienced by protests or think that they might be in the future. Should not proceed to law. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this witness? Senator Raptakis.
Mr. Chairman, not a question, but I want to point out that these events are real. I'll point one out. Summer Taylor, who's a young woman from Seattle, a 24-year-old woman, died in Seattle from injuries sustained when a vehicle drove around several vehicles that were being used as a blockade on Interstate 5 in Seattle. That's because a 27-year-old driver tried to access the closed highway by going the wrong way down an exit ramp. So that's a true story. So none of this is fallacy. So I'd ask the witnesses not to come up with fallacy while they're testifying.
My recollection is that was a road rage incident by someone who was frustrated by the protest, and I don't think that is not a. I don't think it's a valid example of the kind of scenario that you are using to gin up support for this bill.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator Raptakis. We have no other witnesses on that bill, S-404. So the next bill we have is S-190 by Senator Chacon. And our first witness is Caterina Lorenzo Antonio. Good evening, Ms. Lorenzo Antonio.
Good evening.
Yes, welcome to the committee. You may proceed.
Okay. Good evening, members of the Senate Committee on Judiciary. My name is Caterina Lorenzo. I am the director of AMOR, a coalition of Rhode Island grassroots organizations. I'm here today to talk about the importance of the Bill 190, bill that is for undocumented community in Rhode Island. I will talk about all services that we do in the mall. One of the most common requests we go to a mall support line and in our office is to help people in the undocumented community with transportation, especially women with children, because they need to go to appointments, meetings, and to the doctor especially. And yeah, as everybody knows, people that use the public transportation, we know that they are not giving good services in all the neighborhoods. Then we need definitely to have a driver license to people that need to drive in the city and in the state just to go to work, to buy grocery at the store, and to give their children also transportation when they need to go to school, and another important stuff that they do in their life, regular life, to survive. And that's why we think as a coalition this issue is present important for all Rhode Islanders, for the general safety, for all roads, and in particular for undocumented families in our community who need to get around. Undocumented families need to be able to drive in general, but also for all safety, that also is important. We need to protect ourselves, our roads, our health, everything. Then that's why for us it's very important. And this is not like I said, it's not only inconvenience for families, but also it's a component challenge of life and making a living during an already challenging time like the pandemic. Now people can get ride from friends or other people that they are supporting community members. It's so difficult just to be meaningful and not spread the virus. And people need to go to work because the virus is already making people's lives difficult, and don't have a car or a driver license and a car. If they have a driver license, definitely people will get motivated to buy cars, to pay other services that is connected to having a car, insurance, other fees, to change anything around it. Definitely that could be great for our community. That's why I am here in name of our community. I ask that you all support and vote in favor of this bill, 190. And also, as we know, Rhode Island could be joined to the currently 16 states in the United States to that they allow driver license for undocumented immigrants. That could be great for our state and in general for our economy. That's why I'm here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this witness? No, thank you very much. Our next witness is Enrique Sanchez with BLM, Rhode Island PAC, and the PROV DSA. Good evening, Enrique Sanchez.
Hey, how are you doing, sir?
Good. How are you? Welcome to the committee.
Thank you for the shout out to our growing political organization, sir.
Yeah,
how you doing?
You're welcome.
My name is Enrique Sanchez. I am here representing the Providence Democratic Socialists of America and the BLM RI PAC and Reclaim RI as well. Good, strong leftist socialist organizations growing in Rhode Island. I am here in support of Senate Bill 190, which would push for licenses for all in our undocumented community here in Providence and here in Rhode Island in general. Myself being a Mexican, American, Hispanic, Latino, Latinx person, and surrounded myself with a lot of people of color, black folks, brown folks, Asian Americans, white folks, all sorts of all backgrounds. But there are a lot of folks in the communities who are undocumented, unfortunately, especially in the Hispanic community. And folks don't have the privilege to drive. They don't have the right to drive because of being scared to go on the streets and getting pulled over by a police officer, or having that thought of getting pulled over by a police officer. we need to push for licenses for all of our undocumented folks here in Rhode Island. Enough is enough, folks. It's been years after years that we've been pushing for this. We are, especially in Providence and Central Falls, a growing community of Hispanic folks, of Black folks, of people of color, BIPOC folks of all backgrounds, and we need to push for opportunities that where a mom or a father can get their child to school back and forth, can go to work without having to be pressured from the state. We're going to keep fighting out here, but we need folks in the state house, up in both chambers of government, supporting our people. Because at the end of the day, this is also an opportunity for folks, to generate income for our state, through taxes. So it's a win-win for everyone. There are some folks out there who are pretty racist, don't want to see this happen, but, well, so sad, things change throughout the years. But yes, definitely in support of Senate Bill 190 that pushes for licenses for all our folks here in the community. Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this witness from any members of the committee? No, hearing none. Our next witness is Lindsey Piva. Good evening, Lindsey Piva.
Yes.
Hi, yes, welcome to the committee. You may proceed.
Thank you so much. My name is Lindsey Piva, and I am of Coventry, Rhode Island. I'd like to express my strong support of Senate Bill number 190. I'm also a Providence Public School teacher, little learners, and many of my students are from mixed status families. Some of the families have to make impossible decisions between having no reliable transportation to get to work, or to bring their children to school, or driving without a valid U.S. driver's license, which puts them and their family members at unnecessary risk. The passage of this bill would allow all members of mixed status families access to safe transportation. It would open employment opportunities and allow family members to participate more fully in their children's school community. Aside from my love and care for my community and the children that I teach, I also have an even more personal connection to this bill, since my partner is currently in the midst of a status change with USCIS. He is an Italian citizen who was in the U.S. on a work visa, working as a software engineer, and he was laid off due to COVID in August. And he had only 1 month to find another job. And unfortunately, very few companies were hiring at that time, and his visa expired. So we got married and filed all the paperwork for his change of status, and he received receipts as evidence that USCIS started to process his paperwork. But the DMV rejected his license renewal request and actually contacted ICE to have them investigate his case. And now he cannot drive despite being licensed in his home country and having held a U.S. driver's license in Rhode Island for years. And I feel that this is an archaic and ridiculous restriction on the freedom of movement of many folks who are undocumented or folks who filed their paperwork and are awaiting status updates from a very slow and disorganized immigration system. I urge Rhode Island representatives to follow the lead of 16 other states, as well as the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. Immigration status, access to a driver's license. Safe transportation for all families keeps Rhode Island's Thank you so much for listening and for your attention to this bill.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions by any members? Senator Aptakis.
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. I believe, I'm not sure, that if you are a foreign national, say, the young lady just described from Italy, I thought that the DMV was supposed to honor a driver's license while they're here working, potentially the way she described that case situation. I'm surprised why DMV is rejecting accepting the foreign license or making a question to ICE. That makes that is something that we've heard many, many times on this issue. And basically, CIS is very slow. We've had several cases also dealing with CIS, so I hope that DMV can turn around and maybe that might be a way that if someone has a license from another country, whether you're here working or other issues, that maybe we should start looking in accepting those driver's licenses.
Thank you, Senator Aptakis. I see Senator Quesada had her hand up. Senator Quesada.
Just to answer Senator Rataki, it's not that way. Sometimes even people who come documented to the country, they have an issue, DMV. I met with the director 2 times already with some immigration lawyers because I get so many complaints for people who come to this country legally and they wasn't issuing them a driving license or even a Rhode Island IT because they don't, when you come here and you are legally, and they don't give you a green card like blue collar, but a permanent card when you come to the airport. They stamp your passport and they give it to you, and you have to wait sometimes 6 months to a year to receive the card physically. And sometimes they wasn't accepting those stamps that people have in the passport. It's a issue that got better, but it's being a problem.
Thank you very
I
much.
don't know if they heard me from the beginning.
Okay, I'm not sure if you, okay, thank you very much, Senator Quesada. We had a lapse in the camera there. Okay, thank you. Any other members of the committee? Hearing none. Our next caller is David Feliz from the Rhode Island Interfaith Coalition to Reduce Poverty. Good evening, David Feliz.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, for having me here tonight. My name is David Feliz. I am the director and lead organizer for the Rhode Island Interfaith Coalition to Reduce Poverty, a coalition of faith leaders around Rhode Island, advocates, community residents who have come together to fight inequality and fight poverty. The Rhode Island Interfaith Coalition to Reduce Poverty strongly supports Senate Bill 190, which will allow unqualified, undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses. Licensing all drivers would have significant benefits for Rhode Islanders. First, there is a direct correlation between the reduction of poverty and licensing all drivers. Analysis by the Latino Policy Institute states that poverty rates tend to decline at a faster rate in states that provide driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants. Second, licensing all drivers helps to increase traffic safety for everyone. Unlicensed drivers nationwide are 5 times likelier to be involved in a fatal crash than licensed drivers, based on data provided by the AAA Foundation. Undocumented Rhode Islanders, like all other drivers, will need to pass a driving test to get a license, ensuring that unfit drivers are kept off the road. Third, numerous other states have already successfully implemented such reforms, including New York, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, Vermont, Washington, and Washington, D.C. Finally, and most significantly for our standpoint, it is the moral right course of action. Across our varied and divergent faith traditions, certain common themes echo constantly. Prominent among these religious themes is the call to hospitality. We are invited to love the stranger, for we are all strangers, and we are called to do for others as we would have them do unto us. Both faith and facts have moved us to be here strongly to support this bill. We are asking for the committee's support as well in moving this bill forward. Thank you to the Senator Chacon for introducing this bill and for all those who have signed on and supported this bill. Thank you for your time, and thank you all for supporting immigrant communities in Rhode Island.
Thank you, Mr. Feliz. Are there any questions for this witness from any members of the committee? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Erin Papa in support of the bill. Good evening, Erin Papa.
Good evening.
Yes, welcome to the committee. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Erin Papa. I'm a resident of Providence. I'm an educator, and I work alongside immigrants and refugees in our community on a daily basis. I'm here to speak in strong support of Senate Bill 190. My family has been in this state for generations, and like many of you, I'm a descendant of immigrants who came here for a better life, started businesses, and made contributions to the Rhode Island economy. And when they came, the process to become a U.S. resident was as simple as stepping off a boat. But today, this process is much more complex, often leaving our immigrant neighbors in a limbo status, which I think has been discussed already quite a bit at this hearing, which prevents them from fully realizing their potential contributions to our society and economy. But this bill is not about immigration. And as state-level legislators, you don't have the power or authority to make decisions about immigration status. But you do have the power and authority to ensure that all Rhode Islanders feel safe and supported, and that they can safely travel from home to work, to school, to care for their loved ones, friends, and neighbors. And you have the power and authority and responsibility, I think, to ensure that all Rhode Islanders are treated with this dignity and respect and granted this small token, a driving permit, that would require the holder to pay fees to the DMV, to purchase insurance, and to ensure that we all can travel to school, work, home safely. 16 states and the District of Columbia have already passed this legislation, and we've been trying for more than a decade here in Rhode Island to get this passed. There's strong support from state police, insurance companies, the DMV, and Rhode Islanders from across the state. And so I urge you to finally move Senate Bill 190 to the floor for a vote to make our roads safer and communities stronger for all of Rhode Island. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this witness, many members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much. Our next witness is Jonathan Goldman, Student Clinic for Immigrant Justice. Good evening, Jonathan Goldman.
Hello.
Yes,
hi,
welcome to the
thank
committee.
you. My name is Jonathan Goldman, and I'm the Executive Director of the Student Clinic for Immigrant Justice. We have a program at Brown University where we train students to provide free legal services to immigrants and organize for immigrant justice, and I'm speaking in support of Senate Bill number 190. I'm speaking in support of this bill really for three core reasons. One, seeing it as a matter of justice. Two, a matter of public health. And three, a matter of public safety. On the matter of justice side, for many people, whether it's being able to get to work, being able to pick up their children from school, getting to meetings and appointments, going to the beach, visiting friends, whatever it is, a license for so many is essential to being able to both enjoy self, but also just to be able to live life. And because people don't want to break the law by driving without a license or by driving without insurance, many people who would otherwise buy a car to be more independent can't do that because they don't have access to a driver's license. But as I'm sure you may have heard already, this issue does not only impact those currently unable to obtain a driver's license. From a public safety perspective, the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety reports that unlicensed drivers are almost 5 times more likely to be in a fatal accident than licensed drivers. And so this legislation will ensure that more insured and licensed drivers are on our road. And as the Rogers Williams University School of Law and Latino Policy Institute found, issuing driver's licenses to undocumented Rhode Islanders will lead to safer roads and potentially better economic opportunities. But as I mentioned, it's not just a matter of justice here. It's also, from an economic perspective, also beneficial to our community, from allowing our neighbors to have a driver's license so they can more easily take on additional work hours or job changes that can improve economic security for themselves and for their families. Because as it is right now, immigrants without access to driver's licenses restrict their activities at church and community groups and reduce their larger consumer purchases. And then lastly, from a public health perspective, as we've seen during the pandemic, driver's licenses are essential to ensuring people have access to food and health care. Immigrants make up a significant portion of essential workers like agricultural, janitorial work, health care. And without access to driver's licenses, immigrants are limited to travel via public transportation to and from work without the possibility of social distancing. And we've also heard from some of our clients of having issues being able to get the vaccination due to not having a car. And so this is a benefit for all of our community, for the people that we work with, for the community writ large, to be able to pass this bill. And we're grateful for whether it's the Immigrant Coalition of Rhode Island or the Alliance to Mobilize Our Resistance for advocating for these issues year after year. And I hope that this can be the year that Rhode Island, in the same way that Rhode Island has championed so many issues, can also join these other states leading in this way and to allow driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants. So thank you for providing space to talk about this issue, and I urge for it to be passed favorably. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Are there any questions for Mr. Goldman by any members of the committee? No, hearing none. Thank you very much. Our next witness is John Taylor Ellis. You're welcome. Good evening, Mr. Taylor Ellis.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Yes,
Go ahead.
I'm a South Kingstown resident. Thank you, senators. I'm a South Kingstown resident who wants to speak in favor of Senate Bill 190. This has been before the legislature for a number of years. I know I testified, I think, 2019, and I really can't believe that no action has been taken as of yet, and I certainly hope and expect that you will move this forward. This creates an alternative ID driving license for Rhode Islanders, Rhode Island residents, but people without a Social Security card, without, that are not documented from like an immigration point of view. But these are Rhode Islanders that need to be treated with equality in life and not treated in a second-class fashion. Driving is something that is essential for all of us in the state because of the state of public transportation in terms of jobs, quality of life, and that sort of, access. And all Rhode Islanders that pass the test, that have insurance, should be able to have that access to all of the things that most of us enjoy right now. Safe travel without fear of police stopping them, fines, or legal consequences. People need to be able to drive to be fully productive in our society. I think that's what we all want. We want all of us to be able to attain whatever, independence and productivity that we can have. I've been involved in, giving rides to, women with children that are not documented so they can get to important appointments and meetings. But they want to be independent. They want to be able to provide for their families just as like the rest of us do. People need to get around, and they don't want to break the law or drive without insurance. The issue is important to all of us too, from a public safety point of view. By promoting a legal path, it provides greater safety to all of us, and that's something that's really important. There's enough problems out on the roads without adding this and keeping this problem in our state year after year after year. People want their independence to go out to a park or beach or worship at a church and go to those important meetings. Many states have already taken this step, and I really think that Rhode Island has delayed too long in doing it, and I will be certainly looking for this passage and really expect, like the members of the Judiciary Committee to support it, my own senator and other senators in the state, and really break this sort of dual nature in our state that is really unnecessary, unwanted, and really unhelpful to all of us. So that's it right there, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions by any members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. Our next witness is Aurelie Diaz from the Alliance to Mobilize Our Resistance. Good evening, Aurelie Diaz.
Yes.
Yes, welcome to the committee. You may proceed.
Thank you. Can I speak now?
Oh, yes, go ahead. You may proceed.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the committee for hearing testimony today. My name is Aurelie Diaz, and I am a community organizer with the Alliance to Mobilize Our Resistance, known as AMOR. I am a resident in Providence, Rhode Island, and I am in favor of Senate Bill 190 regarding creating a driver's license for people without Social Security numbers, and Senate Bill number 776 regarding granting state IDs for essentially the same population. I work with many community members that are unable to apply for a driver's license, and that is why I'm testifying today. These two bills do not provide driver's licenses or identifications to individuals. Instead, it gives them the possibility of receiving one. I believe the state would benefit more from the outcomes of these bills, in particular the driver's license bill, than the punitive measures implemented for not having a license and driving on the road. To complement the testimony of the senators that testified on their and their families' experiences today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the process for resolving an immigration case and gaining lawful status in the U.S. at the moment. In July 2020, amidst the pandemic, WBUR reported that the Boston Immigration Court, which is the assigned court for most, if not all, Rhode Island immigrant residents, is in disarray with the ever-increasing caseload at that court. Additionally, the ability for individuals to apply for work permits and Social Security numbers while immigration cases are pending has been jeopardized by regulations from the previous administration. Of course, this is not something that we statewide have control over, but these updates to the immigration process mean that there are additional impediments to gaining access to a driver's license while an immigration case is pending, which puts people in very tough positions in their day-to-day lives if they cannot qualify for one. I wanted to end my testimony by saying that whether or not we agree with supporting immigrants, we certainly do benefit from their labor in Rhode Island behind the scenes in a lot of the spaces that we go to and a lot of the spaces that we benefit from. We have heard from people, and we'll hear from people talking about needing a license to get to work, about the necessity to fulfill their jobs as essential workers throughout this pandemic in our state. When public transportation is limited, and the CDC even recommends not to use public transportation for safety purposes, people without the ability to drive have very limited options. For this reason, I fully support Senate Bill 190 and its complementary bill number 776. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from any members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you. Our next witness is, you're welcome, Isabella Garcia. Good evening, Isabella Garcia.
Yes.
Yes, welcome to the committee. You may proceed.
Thank you so much. Yeah, hi, my name is Isabella Garcia. Came to support the bill. This is my fourth time testify, and I'm going to testify anytime we want to. I represent one more people of my community. I'm a single mother. I'm an immigrant. I live in Rhode Island for 22 years old. I came over here when I was 15 years old. And then now I'm still fighting for this bill after 14 years later. I'm a single mother of two. My kid was born over here. And like I said, I'm over here representing my community. And I would like you guys to take my this testimonial for all the immigrants in Rhode Island, and just to ask if just could pass this bill. It's very important for me and hundreds of single mothers like me that we have a license to give a better life to our kids. Like I said, this is my fourth time testifying to support this bill, and I will come anytime until you guys pass it. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this witness from any members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you. Our next witness is Johanna Hernandez. Good evening, Johanna Hernandez.
Yes.
Yes, welcome to the committee. You may proceed. Can you hear me, Johanna Hernandez?
Yes, I can.
Okay, go ahead. We can hear you too. You may proceed with your testimony. Go ahead.
Okay. Mi nombre es Johanna y vivo en el estado de Rhode Island. Muchas gracias por escuchar mi testimonio. La verdad, es muy difícil no tener una licencia de conducir. Yo tengo un hijo, hemos cancelado citas porque a veces hay mucho tráfico.
Joanne,
Yes?
Miss, can I transfer? Can I say what she's saying?
Senator Quesada, yes, it's, I didn't want to stop her, but maybe you can help us with the translation.
Well, what she's saying, her name, what was your name? ¿Cuál es tu nombre otra vez?
Joana Hernandez.
Oh, she said her name is Joanna Hernandez, and she lives in Providence, and she just want to testify how hard it is for her, that she had a son, and many times she had to cancel her doctor's appointment because she don't have a driver license to be able to take her son to the doctor. Continue.
Thank you, Senator Quesada, thank you. Go ahead, you may continue, and then Senator Quesada will fill us in. Thank you.
Joanna?
Yes.
Sigue.
Y en autobús, pues es difícil llegar a tiempo, ya que un viaje en autobús es de 1 hora 15 minutos y pues en automóvil podría ser de 25 a 30 minutos.
She said taking the bus is very hard because when she take the bus, she had to take her 1 hour and a half to make it to her appointment. But if she go by car, it would be 15 minutes.
Thank you. You may proceed.
La verdad, yo he tenido que caminar hasta 2 horas y 22 minutos porque he tenido miedo de agarrar el COVID-19. La verdad que necesitamos las licencias de conducir.
She said many times, because she was afraid to get COVID-19, she didn't want to take the bus. Then she walked for 2 hours and a half to be able to make her to her appointments.
Thank you. You may proceed. You may keep going.
La verdad necesitamos las licencias para conducir y pues para el día a día, para trabajar, para las citas médicas y para llevar a nuestros hijos a la escuela.
She would love to get a driver's license for her to be able to take her children to school, to be able to take her children to the doctor, to be able to do it day by day, and to be able to work.
Y no conduzco por miedo a ser pues detenida y ser deportada a mi país, como varios de mis amigos que he visto con compañeros de trabajo, y pues pagar tickets es lo mismo, no tiene caso. La verdad necesitamos las licencias de conducir.
She said she's afraid to drive without a license. She knew about a co-worker who used to be driving without a license. He got stopped once, and he was deported back to his country. And she's afraid to do that happened to her.
Ese es mi testimonio y muchas gracias por escucharme y pues que tengan una linda tarde.
She said thank you for hearing her testimony this afternoon and to have a wonderful afternoon. Gracias a ti por llamar.
Muchísimas gracias. Buenas noches. Bye.
Okay.
Whoops, Senator, thank you very much for interpreting. If you would please relay the message that we appreciate her testimony this afternoon and taking the time to give her testimony.
Ellos dijeron muchas gracias A ti por llamar y que gracias por dar tu testimonio.
Ok, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you. Next up, we have Elizabeth Saldana. Welcome to the committee, Ms. Saldana. You may begin your testimony.
Thanks. Hi, I am calling in to testify because I want to strongly encourage the members of the committee to pass this particular bill out of committee and into the Senate and then to the House. And the reason for that is this. I am currently a doctoral student in anthropology, and the group that I focus on is former foster youth. And the sort of area of expertise that I am interested in is administrative burden and what happens when you leave care. And what I have found over the course of many, many hours of reading about bureaucracy is that finding paperwork, finding documentation is an incredibly difficult and arduous task, made all the more difficult if you cannot speak the language. But the other thing that has come up over the course of many hours of thinking about what happens to people and how you are able to make a good life for yourself is that it is an absolute requirement for you to drive in this country and in this state in particular. We do not have enough of a public infrastructure to allow people to simply live without a car. You need one to go to the grocery store, to eat, to go to the doctor, to take your kids to school. And for those reasons, it is not, there is no way to live without driving in Rhode Island. And if we do not allow people to get driver's licenses, regardless of their documentation status, which again can be a very arduous and difficult task, we are limiting people to a life where they're either on the precipice of constantly being in fear, which is no real way to live, or we're not allowing them to live at all because we're not allowing them access to basic resources like grocery stores or hospitals or schools. And for all of those things, you absolutely do need a car to get around. So with all of that in mind, I think it is really important that you pass this along to the Senate, let them vote on it, and I will be back to talk to the senators and say you need to vote in favor of this bill. That's the end of my comments. Thanks so much for your consideration, and I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you very much for your testimony this evening. Any questions for this witness? There are no questions by committee members. Thank you for your testimony. Next up, we have, just one moment, please. Just so the committee members know, we have 2 remaining witnesses that we are trying to get in touch with. Okay, so we have Roxana Rivera on the line. Good evening and welcome to the committee, Ms. Rivera. I believe you're testifying on behalf of SEIU 32BJ.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm speaking today on Senate Bill 190, an act relating to motor and vehicles. So thank you, Vice Chair Archambault, Secretary Raptakis, and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. My name is Roxana Rivera. I'm Vice President of the 175,000 member union, 32BJ SEIU. We are the largest majority immigrant union in the country, representing janitors, security officers, maintenance, and airport workers up and down the East Coast. This legislation would enable all qualified state residents to apply for a new Rhode Island alternative ID driver's license and permits, regardless of ability to establish legal presence. Through the COVID-19 pandemic, the work often performed by immigrants has been deemed essential. Whether it's working in restaurants, healthcare, construction, agriculture, or sanitation, the population we have excluded from being able to obtain a driver's license have been the ones showing up at work and putting their own health on the line to perform essential services for the rest of us. In turn, we need to protect the health and safety of immigrants who live and work in our state. The time has come to offer the essential tool of mobility to immigrants who are part of our economic fabric and show that the dignity and lives of our immigrant workforce are essential too. People need to drive. They need to drive to buy groceries, to get to work, to get to the hospital, to have access to COVID testing and vaccines. Driving is essential to mobility in Rhode Island, especially outside of the city of Providence. Public transport options are limited, and their use during these times may increase a person's risk of contracting COVID-19. If Rhode Island allows more drivers to be licensed and insured, we can make our roads safe for everyone. When states require their residents to go through a licensure process, it ensures that all drivers are operating with the same knowledge about the rules of the road. When certain immigrants are barred access to a driver's license, they are barred from one of the basic tools needed to be a safe and responsible driver. Not only does denying access to licensing mean that our roads are less safe, it also means that we are limiting people's ability to meet their basic needs. How can parents, especially in suburban or rural areas, take their kids to the doctor's office or to school without a license? Each trip from home becomes a high-stakes gamble. Besides the safety risks to all drivers of having unlicensed and uninsured drivers on the road, unauthorized immigrant drivers also face unique threats to their safety and ability to remain in this country when they take the risk of driving without a driver's license. Driving without a license for our undocumented community members means consistently being one traffic violation away from getting separated from their children should they get stopped or deported. Moreover, with increased confidence in their ability to be able to go out, we can expect more outings and more consumption, which could lead to a boost to our local economies given their increased spending. This legislation not only enhances public safety on the road, but by permitting easier access to COVID testing vaccines, it increases safety in our workplace and in our communities. This bill can create transformative change for people and at a time of revenue shortfalls, potentially generate revenue for the state through the fees generated by the new licenses and permits. 17 other states, including nearby states of Connecticut, Vermont, and New York, have already passed similar laws. We should be next. We ask that you improve the safety of immigrant families and all Rhode Islanders by supporting the passage of Senate Bill 190 as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gonzalez, for your testimony this evening. Do we have any questions of this witness? Seeing none at this time, thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you to our committee members for your attention tonight. Whoops, I apologize. I have one more witness. That was Ms. Rivera. We are going to Ms. Gonzalez.
Mi testimonio.
Yes, welcome to the committee, Ms. Gonzalez. You may begin your testimony on Senate Bill 190.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias por escuchar mi testimonio. Mi nombre es Nadia González y soy residente de Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Yo estoy a favor del proyecto de ley 190 del Senado. En mi experiencia...
One moment. Senator Quesada?
Yes.
Would you mind interpreting that for us?
Sure.
Oh, thank you so much.
Perdón, ¿tú puedes repetir lo que tú dijiste, mi amor?
Sí. Primero, quiero dar gracias por escuchar mi testimonio.
First, I want to say thank you for listening to my testimony.
Mi nombre es Nadia González y soy residente de Pawtucket en Rhode Island.
My name is Marie. ¿Me dijiste el nombre?
Nadia González.
My name is Nadia González y I live in Pawtucket, Rhode Island.
Y yo estoy a favor del proyecto de ley 190 del Senado.
And I'm calling on behalf of the Senate Bill 1.
Por mi experiencia, cuando yo estuve enferma,
For my experience, when I was sick,
tenía que ir al hospital y yo no me sentía en condiciones de poder manejar porque me sentía mareada.
I needed to go to the hospital and I wasn't able to go to the hospital because I didn't feel good.
Le pedí de favor a mi vecina que me llevara al hospital.
I asked my neighbor to please take me to the hospital.
Pero ella tenía miedo de llevarme porque había toque de queda en ese entonces.
But she was afraid to take me to the doctor because that day you wasn't allowed to be on the street to different hours. It was when the governor put the order that you will only be free at 7 o'clock.
Y ella no tenía licencia para manejar.
And she didn't have a driver's license.
Ella tenía miedo de conducir porque había mucho policía en la calle debido a al mismo toque de queda que había en ese entonces.
She was afraid to take me because there was many police on the street on that day.
Es por ese motivo que yo estoy a favor de esta ley, porque hay muchas personas que necesitan ser trasladados al hospital, pero por miedo de romper la ley y conducir, ponen en riesgo hasta sus propias vidas.
Like me, it's many people who is afraid to take somebody to the hospital and somebody can die because she wasn't able to have a driver's license.
Muchas gracias por su tiempo.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony this evening. Anyone have any questions?
Eso es todo de mi parte. Gracias.
Ellos quieren decir que muchas gracias a ti por tu testimonio. ¿Usted es residente, señora?
Sí, residente de Pawtucket, en Rhode Island.
Ok, mi amor. Gracias.
Gracias a usted.
Thank you, Senator Casada, and thank you again for your testimony this evening. I believe that's the last witness for this evening. Okay. Again, thank you for your patience. It's been a very long day today with 2 hearings back to back. That was the last of our public testimony. And if I could have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
By Senator Rogers and second by Senator Reptakis. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much, committee members. Appreciate it. Thank you to the public.